Again, politics time, with all the other things that's going on, we can't get away from the politics. And indeed, on Sunday, the MSJ, the Movement for Social Justice, revealed their candidates for the upcoming local government elections. And again, just under 4 weeks' time, December the 2nd. What are some of the priority areas for the MSJ? Well, we're joined by the political leader of the Movement for Social Justice, David Abdullah. Good morning, David. Good to have you with us this morning. I wonder if I had you cold. So, yeah. So I don't want.
Very bad one. That very bad one.
Well, there's not a bad one that's going wrong right now, but I got it while I was on vacation.
All right.
So I don't think this is not the time where you want to lose your voice.
That's true. Good morning, fans, and morning to all of your viewers and listeners. And let me just also say condolences to the families really of both Dave Lammy and Hamilton Clement.
Okay, yes.
Yes, two major persons in the media over many decades. Both gentlemen who I engaged with when I would go into media houses to do one activity or the other, Those persons really laid important foundations, and I hope the younger generation learns from how they manage things and how they presented themselves.
And I suppose just on that, I mean, nobody's perfect. We could always find fault with different things, with the way things were done. Sometimes people are a product of their times. Certain times have facilitated a more open, expressive sort of way. For example, the sort of discourse that goes on here, that probably would not have been allowed in the days of TTT and Jimmy Bain and so on.
Certainly not Jimmy Bain.
Not Jimmy Bain. You'll get fired before you even come off the set.
Some people could not get on television. In fact, my first television interview was as a result of Jimmy Bain's policy, so that we were dealing with a pension struggle with Texaco in 1980, and George Weeks could not appear on TTT because he was deemed whatever by Jimmy Bain. Errol MacLeod was a member of parliament. He could not appear on either. And so I was the next person in line, and that was my first television interview, major television interview, dealing with pensions.
So you considered the soft option in those days?
Well, yes, I was not identified at that time as someone who was banned. You remember in 1975, Bain had banned all the people from the ULF.
Yeah.
Rafiq Shah, Bazio Pandey, George Weeks.
There were many unofficial bans subsequently that you only know of if you happen to work in the media.
Well, I know that there were times when we could not get stuff done. I remember having a heated debate with Jones P. Madeira at TTT over some issue. I don't remember the details.
Yeah.
And there were others.
And not just TTT, I'm talking about private
Guardian,
media as well.
Oh yes,
Guardian. The Guardian banned people left, right and centre.
I remember having a heated argument with Carl Jacobs one evening where there was a blackout in the newsroom. TNTech workers were on protest action, and Carl didn't know that I actually came into the newsroom, and he was spouting one particular line, and I said, Mr. Jacobs, do you know blah, 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 and I put forward the union side of the story, and he was horrified because he didn't know I was there. And so he didn't know I was hearing him. And then I refuted all the things he was saying. And I said, well, you have to carry all of this information. You can't just go one side of the story. So I'm well aware of those dynamics over the years.
Indeed. And I suppose you could spend the rest of the morning talking about that. But we brought you here to talk politics. But launching of the campaign candidates yesterday. But has the campaign been hollowed out by the OWTU being named preferred bidders, and therefore the feeling is that this was a clever political strategy by the PNM? Not
at all. In fact, most of our candidates in the Deep South, in Point Fortin Borough Corporation and Sipari Regional Corporation, are in fact OWTU officers, branch officers, members, and so on.
And they're duty-bound to support the PNM now?
Not at all, not at all. In fact, the OWTU passed a resolution in its General Council saying that they were supporting MSJ as the only alternative. Not only that, but even after the decision that Patriotic Energies and Technologies Limited would be the preferred bidder for the refinery and the port, the Joint Trade Union Movement had a conference of shop stewards and branch officers, COSABO, and that COSABO, which was chaired by J2M President and President General of the OWTU, Ansel Roger, also passed a resolution in support of the MSJ. So no, there is nothing. People are saying that while the refinery, it was not a gift to Patriotic and the OWTU, it was a bid that was won, and those details it's not yet final. The agreement has not yet been inked.
There's a 10-point plan, 10 points that have to be fulfilled.
And the deadline, I think, was a couple of days ago.
Right.
So that that process is still ongoing. It wasn't a gift. The union worked hard. They put forward a major bid. So people are not forgetting, however, that the economic crime was in fact the closure of Petrotrin, the closure of the refinery, and the sending home of all the workers, which affected major businesses in South.
And therefore, looking towards December 2nd, which is now less than 4 weeks away, what are the major pillars on which the MSJ campaign is being built?
Several. I mean, I walked yesterday in Marbella, on the train line in Marbella, which has been badly affected by the closure of the refinery. I was in Embarcadero on Sunday afternoon, walking through Embarcadero, and people were talking about problems of lack of employment, high prices, people are just struggling to survive. So that is at one level where people's lives are not good right now. The majority of people in this country are not feeling happy about their situation. And therefore, people are saying they're fed up. And that's one of the lines we are using, that people are fed up. And I asked them, are you fed up?
Well, we've heard that before for
Yes.
decades, David Abdullah. People
But I
always
think
say they're fed up and then see they have no option other than the PNM or UNC.
Right, and this time we're trying to present them with an option. Wherever we're
Is it a
contesting.
viable option? Is it because, just to
Yes,
give you an example,
sure.
general discourse and so on with people in different environments say, boy, me able with this PNM and USC, probably even worse.
Yeah.
But what the MSJ going to do? They don't have no experience and there's a bunch of socialists anyway.
Yeah.
Are you going to put them in office?
Yeah, and that's not the feedback I'm getting from the people I engage with. In fact, there was
But
a
they will tell
gentleman-
you to your face.
No, some of them, one young lady when I was on the train line said she's PNM. She was a young woman too. She said, I'm PNM and we're not changing that. I said, okay, fine. I said, one day you might change. And incidentally, I want to say a good morning to a gentleman, I didn't get his name yesterday, who said that he enjoyed viewing the program of you interviewing me.
Okay.
And I'll tell you off air some other things that he said. But he said he enjoyed that dynamic and so on. So good morning. I told him I was going to be on the program this morning, so I want to say good
Well,
morning.
at least we have one viewer, right?
Yes, you have one viewer for sure. No, the feedback is that people are fed up and they want change. People are saying that's the other thing. And so our campaign slogan is start the change. So we were saying if you're fed up, then you have to do something about it. And what you have to do, you have to start the change. And how do you start the change? You start the change by voting wherever there's an alternative to the PNM and the UNC. Unfortunately, we could not fill out as many corporations, as many candidates as we wanted to. But we are getting traction. Later this morning, I'm up in Stephenville in the St. Barb's Chinapoo electoral district. And this afternoon, weather permitting, I'll be down in the B-Thumb and so on. I already went down to the B-Thumb. I was already in Stephenville. And people are saying that they want change.
Do you have candidates in all 14?
No, we don't. At the moment, I think we have candidates in 7, and not necessarily all candidates for the entire corporations in the 7 that we are contesting.
And of course, the cynical view to all of that is that after all these years of campaigning, and indeed this is MSJ is a work in progress, that after all of that groundwork on the ground, talking to people, meeting people and so on, that you're nowhere close to even a 50% coverage of all the available seats.
Yeah.
Doesn't that tell a really significant story about the failure of the MSJ to really capture that disaffected vote?
No, it says that there's a crisis of resources, because if you calculate, X $1,000 per candidate that is required for a campaign and so on, and you multiply that by however many candidates you have, it's a significant amount of money, and we are constrained by resources. And I know you've raised it before with me, and so because the PNM and the UNC get big money from all kinds of means, fair and foul and so on, but largely because the big party financiers who back those parties, they have the resources that enable them to put candidates everywhere. We don't. We have a very novel approach to trying to raise funds right now, where we are using a donation book, asking people to put from $10 upwards and so on, and they get a receipt right away, and we keep the stub. It looks like a raffle book, and that's what we are trying to do to raise
appropriate
money.
They're taking a chance.
Yes, but we put it this way: they're making an investment in their future for a better life. So it's not a gamble. It really is an investment for a better life. And it enables people then to say that I made a contribution to this party.
What would you say to those who say that a vote for the MSJ is a wasted vote?
I think that we're going to surprise a lot of people by the numbers of people who will vote for us in a lot of the areas where we are contesting. And therefore, in local government, particularly, you want people who are going to be good representatives, and not people who simply going to toe the party line and so on. You want people who are going to work on the ground. And I think our candidates are people, as I walked with them, young people, yesterday in Marbella West, and on Sunday in Springvale Paradise, on in back of there. The people knew the young men that we chose as candidates. They say, yes, these are young men who are in the community and so on. And so I think that people are seeing it's not a matter of a wasted vote. It really is a vote to begin change, and also it is a vote to put into office, albeit at the local level, people who are going to make a difference in their community.
But will they be able to make a difference? And I think that is the relevant question. Even
yes.
if you were to win some constituencies, even if, isn't it correct to say that it would be a major surprise if you were to win a regional corporation or a borough corporation or whatever, but you'll be in a minority and you will be outvoted by the PNM or the UNC, whoever is controlling, and your representative will be coming with the same excuses. Well, all you vote for me, but having voted me and I'm being outnumbered by the PNM and UNC. So, and people don't want to hear those excuses.
Sure, and our approach is going to be completely different. So on Saturday at our launch, our candidates took a pledge, which no other candidate party does. And in that pledge, they committed to doing political work on the ground and being a representative very differently from the UNC and the PNM. So our commitment is that we're going to continue to listen to people, work with people, inform, educate people, mobilize the community around the issues. So if we get frustrated by who controls the corporation, if we are in a minority, or central government frustrating a corporation with lack of resources and so on, then we will inform, educate, mobilize the community, because people empowered is really the key to change. And to empower people, you have to inform, educate, organize, mobilize. Martin Luther King had a very fantastic quote, and I used it on Saturday in my address at the launch. Martin Luther King said, "The supreme task of a leader is to organize and unite the people to turn their anger into a progressive force for transformation, a transformational force for change." And that is what we seek to do. People are fed up, people are angry, they're frustrated. And you make that reference, it's important you make that historical reference, but is it a fair reference? Because the question is, are the people of Trinidad and Tobago as fed up and as they didn't want to hear about this one, they didn't want to hear about Rowley, they didn't want to hear about Kamala again, but is there a level of anger to the point of actually doing something meaningful? Because we see what is happening in other parts of the world. Yes.
Chile is one of the most successful countries in South America.
Well,
and look how they're getting on.
Yeah, it was touted.
It was successful in the sense of, to westernize.
Correct.
By their standards.
Correct.
Progressive, blah, 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 high level of living. But the disparity between the haves and the have-nots, that rise of bus tickets to just 3% was just the trigger,
That's right.
It was something that was been building. There doesn't seem to be any feeling that there's anything building other than looking forward towards Carnival 2020.
Yes, and sometimes what C.L.R. James said, that you have to look beneath the surface. That when things explode, like Chile, like the elections in Argentina, like Lebanon and elsewhere, when those things happen, there really was a long process. The accumulated, James talked about the accumulated process of people being frustrated and angry. And then at a certain point it breaks out. So we don't know when that anger is going to reach the point of people wanting to make the change. What we have to do is to help to educate people about why their circumstances are what they are, and to work with them and offer them leadership in terms of bringing about change. And that is what the MSJ is seeking to do by offering leadership at this moment, and therefore offering an option and saying, okay, let us start the change in this local government elections, and we will continue to build towards 2020 general elections, because it's a process.
But how can you compete? How can you compete with the powers, PNM, UNC? Resources are plenty, state resources that they use shamelessly, both parties, that they use continuously, all the full-page ads and so on, and the big financiers and so on. And never mind, I'm sure you would have spoken to some of those self-same financiers or business people to persuade them, but you know how they operate. Even if some of them are persuaded to your point of view, they know where their bread and their roti is buttered. In that sense. And for example, the PNM, they're having meetings from tonight and tomorrow night and 3 different locations, balloons and music and plenty people trucked in, bussed in, supporters and so on. You can't compete with that?
No, we can't compete with that. No, you're right. But on the other hand, I think we could compete on the ground with people engaging face-to-face with our candidates as they walk and so on. And people are convinced that what we're trying to do, Fazia, is build a movement, build a real movement. The elections is part of it, but we are building a movement for that change. And it's going to be recognized and appreciated when people see the effort that you're making to bring about the change. People walk and say, well, yeah, you're the man I see on TV all the time. Glad to see you in my community. Glad you've come down to engage with us and so on, and to help us, because we really need help to bring about that change.
Okay, we're going to just pause for a while because I've been urged to go to a commercial break, which yes. I haven't been listening to my colleagues just reminding me of that.
Ignore the finances
of
the station.
I will lose my work for that as we come towards 6:34 in Trinidad and Tobago. Let's take that commercial break and we'll be back right after that as we continue our discussion with David Abdullah.
In the midst of Bacchanal, rain come and wash out Massing Bay. And the fuss, and they say we want, we bet, and the views, and the cuss, and they say this is a threat. Yes, the dam, and the blast, and they say we hope it ain't true. They won't dare to cancel, we jump up, 1972. When they hear, they go get the carnival. All masqueraders on heat. Well, they didn't care if it was official, but they start turning thieves on the street. And they start to jump around, yeah. And they start to tumble down, yeah. And they fall down on the ground, yeah. If you see how they came. But what was so comical?
6:38 in Trinidad and Tobago as we take a look at the southern main road in Curep and the interchange as the work continues in that area. It's going to take quite a bit of time because there's a lot of work to do there and a lot of disruption for commuters, but they've been able to work their way around it quite well so far. But let's continue our dialogue in the few minutes that we have left with David Abdullah, the leader of the Movement for Social Justice, and talking about whether or not the MSJ can make inroads via this local government election process, and whether or not this is an effort that you feel is either gathering momentum, because we often use that term, David, about our politics being very binary, as in 0 or 1.
Yes.
PNM, UNC, UNC, PNM.
Winner take all.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's why I put forward the point that even if you do have representation,
yes,
as a minority,
yeah,
you will be drowned out. And for whatever vows you may take at Sunday's event and so on, people want deliverables. They want better circumstances. They want people in office doing things for them, not making excuses.
Yeah, sure. And so our approach is going to be win, lose or draw. Our candidates, our representatives are actually going to be the de facto or the de jure, the real or as elected, or the persons to whom people in those areas can go for help and leadership. So this is not going to be us contesting and then we disappear. This is going to be us continuing to build the movement and to build a relationship of trust with people, because that's one of the problems too, people don't trust parties, they don't trust.
With good reasons.
Very good reason, excellent reasons, which is why we have MSJ. Because if we could have trusted PNM or UNC, then there would be no need, quote unquote, for MSJ. But precisely because people can't trust those two parties anymore because of all that they have done, and we don't need to go into all their sins.
Yeah.
And so on. And that is why we are offering now an alternative, a real option for change, both in how we intend to work after and based on our track record before, taking up issues even when we had nobody in office. We were taking up issues, speaking out on issues, defending people, highlighting problems in communities, getting attention from the authorities to resolve problems. And that's what we're going to continue to do after December 2nd. And it's building a movement, really. And movement building is not an overnight thing. But we are expanding and we are growing. And it's not growth by people just liking us on social media. That's an easy thing for people to do. This is actually people now in Picton, Betham, in St. Barb's, Chinapoo, in other parts of the country, in Diego Martin and so on. People are coming forward. People came to us.
What about the middle class? Or if we still have a middle class, what about those who are relatively comfortable? Are you making any ground there? Because the general feeling is that you may have traction with those at the poverty level or close to the poverty level, or have been frustrated by their circumstances, which is all well and good. But as to those who could actually bring some momentum to the MSJ with their support, their resources and so on, are you making any ground there?
There is some. I mean, not in terms of people coming forward as candidates, but certainly as we walk in some areas, because a lot of the electoral districts are mixed. So like, for example, in Diego Martin, you have mixed communities. In San Fernando, there are mixed communities and so on. So that on Friday, for example, I'm going to walk in Harmony Hall, and then sometime in Gopal Lands, which are middle-class areas, if you wish, or lower middle class, upper middle class, depending on how you want to define it. And yes, there are people there. People come up to me and say, yes, we're supporting you and so on. Go ahead. So yes, we are getting traction there. And a lot of people are saying, why didn't have a candidate by us? I got a call from Mayor Guayagwari. We want a candidate. Somebody came to me, so we want a candidate in Sandy Grande or candidates in Sandy Grande. So yes, more and more people are coming to us across the spectrum, and that is positive.
What is the defining philosophy of the MSJ? Because we live in the Western world, and everything that is associated with the word social or socialism is demonized. You have the Americans, you can't say the word socialism without them thinking communism immediately. Yeah. And much of that attitude is filtered to our part of the world, the idea of a labor movement thing, labor people, all these poor people go on to take over everything, and they know they can't run everything. They want to nationalize everything. They want to run business people out of the country. They want to alienate the people who really are able to work hard. They just want to give workers everything for nothing and so on. Yeah. What is the philosophy of the MSJ?
Well, it's in our name, social justice, which is four square, to use a legal term, which is squarely within the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago. Because the
but what does it mean? I understand what you're saying.
I'm going to paraphrase what the preamble says. But what the preamble says is that we, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, affirm our belief in the principles of social justice. And therefore, the economic system should be so organized that the material resources serve the common good. Common good. And therefore, the resources of Trinidad and Tobago must serve the good of all, not what happens now with it serves primarily the good of a few. So as I said on Saturday in my address, we are not against business, but it cannot be a society, we cannot have a society where a few people get all and the majority of people get little or nothing, which is what is provoking the protests, for example, in Chile, the inequality, and elsewhere in Argentina, which caused Macri to lose the election and so on. The inequality in our society we have to address. And what social justice seeks to do is to deal with inequality. It seeks to deal with, and what the preamble, come back to the preamble, it says labor should not be exploited or forced to work in inhumane conditions. That advancement should be on the basis of merit and integrity. So advancement not on the basis of who you know, or which school you went to, or what color of skin you have, or anything like that, or which party card you hold, or people should not be discriminated against by where you live, and so on. So we have, social justice means an end to discrimination, an end to the injustice of the criminal in the criminal justice system.
But isn't that hopelessly utopian?
No.
Isn't it correct to say that we've had many examples over the years of whether you call it a socialist movement or a people's movement that has actually turned out to be tyranny? And on the other side of it, that a social movement of whether they were to use the crude phrase, taking from the rich and giving to the poor, is actually promoting inefficiency, that you're giving people benefits without them giving the commensurate return in productivity?
So no, we're not talking about a Robin Hood type thing of trying to just take money from the wealthy and give handouts. No. So for example, one of the proposals that MSJ has is that in communities we should have community cooperatives. So the CPEP program, rather than having a CPEP contractor who gets changed whenever the party changes, because most likely the contractor has some link with the party in power, the workers and the people in the community own a cooperative. To create business, a culture of business and a sense of ownership, to maintain the facilities in the community, the common facilities in the community, so that we build community pride and a sense of community ownership, and so on. Now, that is not giving anything to the poor. That is trying to strengthen and develop the sense of entrepreneurship and ownership in our country. We are talking about a massive, and of course this can't be done through local government, but a massive national development infrastructure program to address things like flooding and roads and things like that, and to have people again in the communities organized in cooperatives to do the work so that we transform. Are people
ready for that? Given the way we do things in this country, to, mobilizing, getting people to get involved, take an active part in their own governance, are we really ready for that? Because the evidence suggests that over many, many years, we've voted people out rather than voting people in, and having voted a certain group out, we expect the next group, now that we sit back and let them do everything for us, and then complain afterwards to vote them out again.
Right, yes, and that has been the political culture. But if you look, there's another dimension to the culture of the society, where all the examples of excellence really are examples of people organizing themselves in their communities to do things, whether it is organizing a Ram Leela celebration, whether it is organizing a steel band concert, other community events, NGOs doing stuff. People are organizing things on the ground with limited resources and doing very well because they own it. It is theirs, and therefore they put the effort into it. Sacrifices is not something that people get paid for. It's purely voluntary effort, and we have to be able to find a way of transforming or transferring that energy and that sense of doing things for ourselves, which is very powerful on the ground, into governance and into other kinds of activity which people normally say that is the government owned. So if, for example, you have these community cooperatives, then maintaining the buildings, the community center no longer becomes the government owned or the party person who controls the village council. It becomes ours. And therefore, we have to have activities there that support the communities and empower communities going forward.
My issue with all of that, and we have a few minutes left, which will allow us to develop a couple more points as we move along, is that doesn't it still come down to the presumed intelligentsia, those well-educated, those who are the professionals, to come around to that way of thinking? And the reason I bring it up is, again, not wanting to beat the dead horse, because the horse is very much alive when it comes to the Daryl Smith matter.
Yeah.
The fact that an issue, and I said it, and I'm going to repeat it at the risk of sounding repetitive, but I'm going to repeat it, that the courts of this country would determine a matter involving a person elected by the people, involved in a matter, apparently sexual harassment, and they would seal the judgment. Doesn't that tell you that even the courts of this country believes that there's a dividing line of us and them, that the political class are somehow above us, that even though we pay them, even though our tax dollars pay them and they should be accountable to us, that the courts agree that they don't have to be?
Okay, so that's interesting. I mean, there's several things in that Darren Smith issue which are very fundamental. I mean, the industrial court simply would register and give their approval to something that had been settled between the two parties. So the Ministry of Youth or whatever.
Yeah, but David, that can't fly.
No, the point I'm making is that where the problem arose was where it was agreed by the representative of Ms. Morrow and the representatives of the ministry that the settlement would be $150,000 and a non-disclosure agreement. Now, they then registered that with the industrial court. Now, in that circumstance, the industrial court cannot determine otherwise. If the matter had gone to open court, it would have been a completely different story. Yes? So, but there are lots of other issues, but there are problems associated with the people who are involved in the investigation quite clearly. The people who, the whole hiring process of a system where ministers could hire people and so on, political appointees rather than use professional public servants, that was a major problem. The issue of the initial attempt to cover up, which is why it led to a dismissal and so on, which was attempt to cover up. So there was a series of problems all the way down the line, and that is symptomatic of the problems of the country. You're absolutely right. And one of the things that a very important quote by Stephen Covey, he said, management is about climbing efficiently the ladder of success. Leadership is about knowing which wall to lean the ladder on. Now, we have a society of managers, technocrats, the persons who Lloyd Best called the validating elites, the middle classes, the technocrats, those people who have benefited from our education system and who some of whom are doing very well in our society. And all they have done is climb the ladder of success for personal position, wealth, power, whatever it is. But they have never said, is this wall upon which the ladder that we have climbed, is that wall crumbling? And the wall is crumbling, the society is crumbling all around us. And our leadership, that is why we have no leadership, because they're simply prepared to do well for themselves without saying, let us change it.
I'm sure the people gathering at the PNM meeting this evening, wherever it is, because I know there's one this evening, because there's a lot of ads around, they're going to be saying otherwise. And there'll be a significant number who might be watching right now, who might be saying, well, I might not be a big fan of the PNM. I certainly don't see the MSJ as that one leaning up a ladder against a wall that I am prepared to support. Yeah,
we're not trying to climb that ladder. We're trying to create a new structure, a new house built upon a new foundation with walls, so that within that new house, all people in Trinidad and Tobago could have a decent life and a better life. That's what we try and do. We're challenging the status quo. So we are challenging those who are simply climbing that ladder of success. We are saying that the walls of our house, of our nation, are crumbling around us. And all we have been doing over the years is putting some paint on it, plastering the cracks, and so on, like the Darren Smith report, attempt to put some paint and plaster and make it look nice, when in fact a lot of the wall is bad and crumbling. We are challenging that to create a new society. Let me use exactly what Dr. Rowley talks. Of course, we call that the Second Republic. And we're beginning that process of change, starting the change with these local government elections.
And moving forward from however it goes with this local government election, are the results, as far as how the MSJ performs, is it going to affect the way moving forward? For example, if it turns out to be very disappointing, are you going to have a rethink and do as you did for the last general election of saying, well, we're not going to contest because we don't feel that we're ready for it? Is that a possibility?
Right after the elections, yes, we're going to do a very thorough assessment and so on. And if it turns out, which I don't think it will, but let us assume it turns out very badly for us, we will have to do a rethink. And not in terms of what we are committed to do to build a movement to bring about social justice in the country. That will not change. But we may have to rethink our electoral approach, yes. But of course, I always make the point that this is not about the short term, this is not about shortcuts, this is about building a movement for fundamental change in the country. And in the local elections, we are making a major jump forward as we start the change.
But I understand the point that you're saying that with every movement it takes time. But don't you detect an increasing level of impatience, especially by the younger people, even those well-educated who can't get jobs, who find themselves in situations where even if they do get jobs, they're being paid to do nothing. They're sitting down, wasting time, wasting their talents, wasting their abilities, and so on. And again, it's not just the PNM to blame, it's the UNC to blame, it's the way we've done our governance to blame for decades. How much longer do you think people are prepared to wait and wait and wait until there's something really serious to happen?
Not a long time, which is why the mood is that people are fed up. Right, that's certainly the feedback that we're getting, and it's across the board. You're right, with young people. My daughter is one of them. My son was out of a job for a whole year before he went to university, and so on. So yes, we know the frustrations of young people, and we hear that not only by those who have gone to university or who are about to go to university or coming out with a lot of passing, but we're hearing it on the ground with young people who are just on the block without employment. So yes, the frustration is building up. People are fed up, and that is why we think there is that mood of people prepared to begin that process of change.
And before we conclude, and because we've talked about the PNM and their meetings all over the place, and the UNC with their meetings all over the place, you've launched your campaign, you've announced candidates and so on. What happens next on the campaign trail in the few seconds we have left?
Well, basically our candidates are walking, because that's the most important thing, to engage the community of persons who we're asking them to vote for, to walk and to meet. We will have some meetings in some of the corporations, but of course we're not going to spend the kind of money that the PNM and UNC are spending, but we are working on the ground, and that work is going well.
David Abdullah, thanks very much for joining us this morning. No handshakes because I don't want anybody to get the call. Same thing with Kilquate yesterday.
Well, I wouldn't blame you for that if I do get it, so that's very fast.
No problem at all. David Abdullah, the leader of the MSJ, with his perspective as we move towards the local government elections coming up on December the 2nd, less than 4 weeks away, with so many things happening in Trinidad and Tobago. No doubt there'll be lots of developments as we move towards that. The news coming up, and then we move into the second hour of Morning Edition.
Very well, everybody have their minds bent, so they have to try and save us this embarrassment.